Okay. In this lesson, we will be learning the window functions in SQL Server. Okay.
Yeah.
So, window functions. What is a window function? First of all, there's different categories of window functions, which is aggregate functions like average, sum, count, minimum, maximum, and ranking functions, rank, dense rank, and so on, row number, and analytical functions, which is read, lag, first value, last value, and so on. First thing, what is a window function? Window function is something that you remember the group by, right?
Yeah.
It would group by the say group by some columns and then give you like aggregate function or whatever you want to do, right? So now imagine you can do that operation in on say row level, let's say. Like for example, let me demonstrate. Huh? Okay, so now let's see what we have here. For example, in homework we have salesman, step employee, employee details. Let's see what do we have here. This, let's say, what is this? This. Orders, personal info. I think we have that employee table, right? Somewhere, yeah. Okay. Now, if you see this, we have this employee table, right? And we have some duplicate values, right? Now, one, 2, 6, 7. Let's do this and see. Select employee ID. Start. Group by employee, right? So this is what we have. So we have these two duplicates. There's two 101s and two 102s, right? Okay. And now, if I want to also select at the same time, select this first name and last name, right? Like this. This doesn't work because it will give me an error saying this first name and last name is not part of the aggregation or the group, right?
Yeah.
So now I will show you one thing, then you'll understand what we're trying to do. Okay? So first name, last name, and count. Let's say. So now what happened is, it is also selecting these IDs. In front of each of them, it's giving the count. See?
Yeah.
So employee 101, there is 2 of them. And this is also 101, there is 2 of them.
Yes.
102, there is 2 of them. There's 2 of them. And then so on. These are only 1 and 1. Basically, window function lets you perform aggregation or whatever on a row level. See?
Yeah.
I'm doing the aggregation for each row. So now it doesn't matter. I can choose as many columns I want, like this. And it doesn't break, and I don't have to put any of those into, you know, in the group by clause and then also in the heading or whatever, you see? Yeah. Basically, this window function will create a separate column, you see? And then it will do whatever aggregation or ranking or analytical function you want on a row level.
Yeah.
You can count, you can take the counts for each row, you can take the maximum for each row, you can take the minimum, just like here. You see, you can do average, sum, count, minimum, maximum, etc. Or you can do row number, rank, dense rank, and so on and on. Okay? This will learn which one, what does what, right? But the difference between this window function and the group by is that group by first groups it by whatever you specify, so that that group will appear only once, right? Yeah. But in our case, the rows, the number of rows or whatever doesn't change at all. Yeah. We are still performing these aggregate functions on row based. Like, for example, let me do this, right? Let's say I want to show you the difference between this and the group by, okay? I want the employee ID and then the first name, okay? And then also I want to take the count. Now, if I want to use the group by, I have to group by these columns, right? Because otherwise it will give me an error. Okay? And now if I execute this, if you look at this, it's only showing each ID only one time. Yeah. Okay? So 101 is 1. So 1, because we're doing on ID and name, it's taking it unique across these 2 columns, right? This is 101 Nina, this is 101 Steven. Right? That is why it's showing it like each one is 1. Okay? Let's say if I want to remove this and just leave the ID column, then it will show me 101. There is 2 of 101s and there's 2 of 102s and so on, okay? Yeah. But in this one, it will give you that information for each row. So group by is basically selecting kind of, it's selecting distinct, right? Yeah. Selecting each ID one time only, and then showing the number of those IDs. So 101, there's 2 101s, right? 102, there is 2 102s. Okay? Yeah. Because we are grouping by employee ID. So we're creating a separate group by the employee IDs. Okay? Yeah. But now imagine you can put this count in front of each row here. See? Yeah. For example, let me execute this both at the same time and you'll see the difference. 101, it says 2. And for the next 101, also it's saying 2. So basically it's saying there is 2 101s for each of them, right?
Yeah.
In this case, it's only saying one time, 101, 2, 102, 2, 104, 1, and so on, okay? Basically, window function, or window functions, they let you do aggregation on a row level.
Row level.
Yeah, you see? You can, and easiest way to remember is this. So this partition by means group by. Okay, this is just the synonym of group by.
Yeah.
And this order by is just order by. Okay. And this is the general syntax for the window functions. You have your aggregate function or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And then you have to say over. And then in the parentheses, you say partition by. This will define which column you want to group by. Okay. Partition by is basically the synonym for group by. And then you just say order by. Okay. Order by is usual order by. And then you can select whatever columns you want, and then this will become a new column. And then this will do this function for each row based on this grouping. Okay, so that is basically what a window function does. Window function performs any of these functions, aggregate functions such as average, sum, count, minimum, maximum, and so on, or ranking functions, rank, dense rank, row number, etc. And analytic functions, lead, lag, first value, last value, etc. Okay, on a row level.
Yeah.
Okay, then you have your over, which is this over. You see this.
Yeah.
That does, over clause defines the partitioning and ordering of rows.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically it's a window for the above functions to operate on.
Yeah.
These functions are called window functions. And now I'll basically what's happening is, say we have this employees table, right? Okay. This over is the window function, okay? This over is the window function. What it's doing is it's partitioning the result sets. Partitioning means grouping.
Employee ID.
Yeah, by employee ID. So basically it's creating a window of employee IDs, okay?
Yeah.
And for each employee ID, right, whatever function is here will get performed, okay? So in this case, for employee ID, for example, employee ID 1, so because we are taking the window of employee IDs, right? Just imagine this is one window, like this is one window, 2 windows, 3, and so on, like, right? Window means the limit.
Yeah.
And this count function is being performed in this window level. Okay?
Yeah.
So now we have these 2 101s. That's why they're both are getting 2.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the employee ID window for 101. And this is another window, and these are another windows.
Yeah.
And 102 is another window, and since there's 2 of them, they both are getting 2. 104, there's only one 104, and that's why it's getting 1. Basically, it's counting the employee IDs based on the employee ID.
Yeah.
So it's counting the employee IDs based on the employee IDs. Based on the employee IDs means it's counting the same employee IDs. the employee IDs that are the same, duplicate employee IDs, basically. Okay?
Sorry, let me drink some water. Just 1 second.
Yeah, sure. So now let's do some other window functions. Okay? That way it will be more clear. Okay? Let's say do a maximum. Okay? Let's say find the maximum of salary. Okay? Maximum of salary and among employee IDs. Okay. The window will be the employee ID. Or let's say, actually, you know what? We'll do the window in job IDs. Okay. So we'll basically maximum for each profession. Okay? So that's why. So we need to group it by the job ID, right? Job ID. Let's order by also job ID. Okay. You see, now if I execute this, so the max, you see this maximum, let me put as max salary. Okay. So what is happening now here? Grouping it by job IDs, right?
Yeah.
Because we're saying partition by job ID. Right? And then it's performing this function, maximum salary function, in these windows. So this is one window for AD press. This is another window. This is another window for accountant. This is one window for manager, and this is another window for IT programming, right? Now, what's happening is this max function, max salary, right? It's finding the maximum salary of these windows.
Yeah.
Those means among these groups. For basically, for these three people who are AD press people, maximum salary is 240.
Yeah.
See? Receive the same salary, and maximum obviously will also be 240. And there's only one AD VP, and the salary is 17,000, and maximum also obviously will be the same. And now if you look at this one, we have two accountants, right? One has 9,000, the other receives 8,200. Maximum among these two people is the 9,000.
Yeah.
That's why it's putting 9,000 in front of both of them.
Yeah.
You see, basically this function, this maximum aggregate function, is being performed based on these groups. And then the value, whatever value comes out of it, is being assigned to each row now. See? This gives us, we can say, okay, this person who's Daniel Fayette is an accountant, and he earns $9,000, and the maximum salary in his department is also 9,000. So his salary is equal to the maximum salary.
Yeah.
This John Chen is also an accountant, but he earns 8,200, but the maximum salary for his department is 9,000. You see, basically this aggregation is being performed on a row level. See, for each row. If we had to do this by using the group by, you wouldn't receive all these rows all these maximums. You would receive one maximum for each group. That's it.
Group by, because group by is by columns, yeah.
Yeah, group by its columns, right?
Yeah.
Give you maximum by each group, but it will
Yeah.
not give you this.
Yeah.
So that's why basically when you want to perform any of these functions, like be it aggregate function or rank or whatever function, on a row level, basically you want to put that value on each row, then you use the window functions.
Yeah.
The reason why it's called window functions because it takes the window of whatever you specify here. So it's taking the window of job IDs, okay?
Yeah.
This is one window, this is another window, so on. Okay? And then it's performing the whatever function we specify here among this, within this window, and then selecting the result against each row.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now I will do one more window function. It will make it even more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do row number. Okay. Row number is nothing but just a number of, it will start numbering the rows. Okay. We'll again do row number by job IDs. Okay. And for max salary, we'll say, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at this, you see what's happening? So we have this window, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 add press. There's 3 of this add press. So, and it's numbering those rows. It's saying add press 1, add press 2, add press 3. And then for add VP, it's starting from the beginning. Add VP 1.
Yeah.
Then accountant 1, accountant 2, manager 1, programmer 1, programmer 2, programmer 3, programmer 4, programmer 5.
Yeah.
You see what's happening? Because since we specified the partitioning by the job ID, creating the window by job ID, basically grouping these rows by the job ID, okay? And then it's assigning numbers for each of them.
Yeah.
You see? Address 1, 3, this is 1, this is 1, 2, this is 1, and this is 5. So that is what window function does. Window function basically groups the rows by any column that you specify. And performs this whatever function you assign based on this partitions. Okay.
Yeah.
Partition means just a portion. Okay. So it's basically different pieces, partitions. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why it's called partition by. Okay. So it's partitioning these rows by these job IDs.
Yeah.
It's dividing these rows into partitions by the job IDs. Okay. It's creating one partition for this job ID, another partition for this one, another partition for this job ID, another for this job ID, and so on.
Yeah.
This function will be performed within each partition separately.
Yeah.
Okay? Does it make sense?
Yeah. Within each partition, in like row by row, yeah?
Yeah. This function will start over when the new partition starts.
Oh, okay.
You see? Like, how many partitions do we have here? Partition means a group of same things. Okay? Like, it's divided into pieces by same things. Okay? So partitioning, since we're partitioning by job ID, these rows are divided into partitions based on their job IDs. Okay? This job ID is one partition, and this job ID one partition. This job ID is another partition, this is another partition, and this is another partition.
Yeah.
Now, since we have divided into partitions by the job ID, now I can perform this row number in each partition separately. Okay?
Yeah.
This function will be performed on each partition separately. Okay? That's why if you look at this, now we have this partition, right? And its row number, it just assigns numbers to the rows. Okay? That's why it's called row number. It numbers the rows on the partitions, okay? So now what's happening is we have this partition, right? Understand what partition means, right? How these are partitioned. So same job IDs are considered one partition. Okay? So now we have 3 add press. This is one partition. And 5 of the IT prog. This is also another partition. Basically, the same job IDs will gather into one partition. Okay? Then, in that partition, in of those separate partitions, this function will be performed separately.
Yeah.
That's why if you see here, this is the add press partition, right? It's counting the rows by the partition. So 1, 2, 3. And this is account partition, right? And it's counting the rows 1, 2. And this is a programming partition. It's counting all the rows E within the programming partition. It's numbering them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see? So now, what is the use from this? Right? The very popular use case is getting rid of the duplicate values. Okay? Now, let's create one table with duplicate values, okay?